So it's really a miracle, I think, when films like Napoleon Dynamite or Juno, which are kind of some of the most accessible independent films out there. Napoleon Dynamite was the most profitable film ever to come out of the Sundance Film Festival's narrative competition program. So out of the 16 films they show there every year, I think it made $40 million roughly in theaters. I have no idea what it did on DVD or merchandise. They were even selling moon boots at one point with Napoleon Dynamite brands on it. But that film made more money than any other independent film to date had. Another good example of huge success in recent years is March of the Penguins, which was actually a French film with documentary about penguins. But in the original version, all the penguins had French voices. They were all an individual character, and they had the subtitles underneath it. Warner Independent came in, purchased it, stripped out all that crap, and hired Morgan Freeman to come in and created a voiceover, and ended up making $70 million. So distributors literally looked at that and said, that's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. We want to buy films for like $1 million, and we want to make $100 million on them. That's what we want. That's what we need to be doing. Well, that's a really unlikely scenario. And what we saw then was at Sundance, which is the de facto premier market for new American independent cinema, distribution companies came in and they would try, they would fight and jockey over films that they thought might be that next $100 million hit. And every once in a while, somebody gets lucky and they pick up a Little Miss Sunshine and it rolls to high profits. But more often than not, you end up with clunkers, and the prices started jumping. The highest price ever paid for an acquisition out of Sundance was Hustle and Flow just a couple years ago, and they signed a 3-picture deal with the producer of that, John Singleton, and I think the film's deal was like $20 million, and I think it made nowhere near that. So it's the money game became, I guess the theme that you're picking up here is that the film world began treating the specialty or independent world like the film business of yesteryear. And they're only now trying to really grasping that times have changed and that the old business models aren't working. One really exciting example of new thinking in this is a company called Emerging Cinema. Emerging Cinemas, I think that's what it's called. It's a company that decided, well, one of the problems, this is all tied together, I promise. One of the things that's wrong with cinema today is that it requires such an investment of equipment and infrastructure to show. Walking around this building today, I kept looking at all the different rooms and thinking, can't show a 35mm movie there, can't show it here, because it requires hulking projectors, ceiling vents, and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sound. And a lot of people think it's a dying medium anyway, so new monies are not being put into that. Money is instead being put into digital projection and digital sound, and that makes a lot more sense. But the industry isn't there yet. They're not distributing their films on digital or high-end video yet. So companies, there's this weird tug of war where the exhibitors, the theaters that you go see movies at, are saying, yeah, of course, we'd love to have a server in the back room where you upload the movie to, and we're going to watch it and project it, and it's going to cost us nothing to have the print sent here. It's going to cost you nothing to have a print made. It's just we're going to push a button in, and there it is. It's going to cut everybody's costs dramatically. But if we're going to do that, you're going to pay for the equipment, Mr. Studio. And the studio says, wait, us? What are you talking about? You're the moviegoer. You're showing it. It's your business, your deal. So there's been a real tug of war, and only in the last 5 years or so have the theaters and the distributors kind of come to some agreements, and you're starting to see more and more experiments being made at some of these theaters. I don't know if the one down here at the highway has gotten that far yet, but we'll see. We're seeing it definitely. Los Angeles and New York are the leaders in this, but they're starting to pop up around the country. So back to my Emerging Cinemas story. This is a company that looked at rooms like this, looked at old libraries, looked at classrooms, looked at museums, and said these are institutions and places where cinema should happen, where people should have the option and be able to see cinema, new films. But because of the vast, really expensive technological needs, it will never happen there on a regular, sustainable way. So they began selling a service, basically like this computer server I was talking about and a digital projector. Great, that's just technology. What's so special about that? They then went out and made deals with all these different distributors, these exhibition companies, to say, look, we're going to pay you money to let us show your films on this service. And the studios started looking at this saying, wait, holy cow, this is it. You know, we're not having to spend any money on prints. I should also mention, I suppose, prints. When I mention this word, we all grew up watching movies in the theater, and they'd have the big projectors in the back running, the 35 millimeter film, and they'd have multiple reels, or they'd have a big platter, 6 feet across, streaming the film across the room. A print, a 35 millimeter print for a standard length film is enormously expensive. I don't know, I've never made one, but I've heard anecdotally you could spend upwards of $30,000, $40,000 on a print, maybe, substantially more. So if you multiply that times the 3,000 plus theaters or screens we have in this country, you start getting an idea of how much money these studios are spending just to create the medium that is then shown to us all. So when you start talking about eliminating that entirely and allowing a company to push a button so it's delivered to you or you or you, and it saves millions and millions and millions of dollars and completely changes the game. But we haven't gotten there yet, and because of the sort of specific technological needs or requirements of that equipment and the sheer number of conversions that have to take place and the training that has to take place in order to make that happen. It's a slow process. But a lot of people have predicted within the next 10 or 15 years we're just going to see the death of film or prints entirely. I, for one, hope we don't, but that's a whole other story. So distributors like Emerging Cinemas, like Miramax, like anyone else, Paramount, they're all having to find new ways of making money, and they're all having to find new ways of distributing films. And this is an enormous challenge, particularly in this environment where there are fewer theaters and fewer places for them to be showing films. So that's that piece of it. We now come to the part of the program which I could talk indefinitely about, which is the ace in my hole. I feel comfortable about this topic and how much time do we have? I could go on forever, so we'll have to stop me at some point. And that is film festivals. Where do film festivals fit into this process, or this whole world of independent cinema? Film festivals really, I should actually put, I always forget to do this. Does anybody have any idea who founded the very first film festival or what the very first film festival was? Would anybody like to take a stab at this? No? The very first film festival ever created was the Venice Film Festival. And we owe its creation to Benito Mussolini, who created the framework for that being able to happen. So there you go. Fascism left us with at least one good thing. We've all heard of film festivals. I've mentioned Sundance already. The film festival I run is certainly not Sundance on any scale. It's a very small regional festival. Other significant festivals are the Toronto Film Festival, the Cannes Film Festival. Berlin has a tremendous one. You could go on and on. There's many film festivals. By some estimates, there's more than, I just did this the other day. There was something, I was talking with some people and we were saying, how many film festivals are there? And it's a funny game to play because there's no way of knowing. Because some art house theaters will call themselves a festival. The Music Box Theater in Chicago, for instance, claims to have like 20 festivals a year. Hey, this weekend is the Festival of Romanian Cinema, and next weekend it's the Festival of Fassbinder Films, and next week, it's not, the definition of festival is flexible. So, but there's certainly more than 1,000 film festivals in this country, and more than 3,000 in the world, which if you look at that means roughly 3 festivals somewhere a day are happening in this country. And if you work in my industry, that's very easily believable. Film festivals have staked a claim for themselves as the place to showcase independent cinema.